Hey everybody, I'm Henry Kaiser, and welcome to 5 Hats, where I bring you to my process developing a video game as a producer, designer, engineer, artist, and journalist. A veteran interviewer doesn't just rattle off a checklist of questions like a dialogue tree. They listen and flow between what they need to ask and what the subject knows or wants to share. There's a rhythm to it. So let's lean into listening as we script an interview rhythm game. When mapping what players should want to do repeatedly in the core loop of a journalism game, if interviewing isn't that central thing, then the game may as well be about photography or detective work. That said, it's not a simulator. Gamifying interviews should be fun, and abstraction isn't a bad thing. So how did I land on a rhythm game? Well, last episode I explained journalism assignments in this are procedurally generated, and the story for your article isn't collected as sentences, but as items, crafting ingredients. I'm not going to go through all the ways I learned not to make a light bulb, but let's talk about a couple of the iterative challenges. The first real constraint was ideating a mechanic to serve up a crafting pantry, a storage of questions that can be explored. It should keep players only somewhat sure what ingredients they'd get, how much someone knows, what the answer quality will be, and then it should time bind players from being able to collect every possible answer. This tracks real journalism interviewing. You know what you think you're writing about and what questions to start by asking, but your subject could be a dead end, or a surprising bastion of knowledge, or desperate to share something that takes your article in a whole new direction. The second iterative challenge became delivering interviewing into an action game box. It needed to be something active. It couldn't also distract gamers from scanning for dangers, and it needed to use as few buttons as possible, leaving joysticks and other action mappings unaffected. 50 design passes later, and we have the bones of a prototype, a single-track rhythm game about listening and nudging conversation into the questions of your choosing. It's not feature complete, especially considering as I make this video, I'm undergoing a massive rhythm-based design overhaul for the whole game. But I said last video that we'd cover this, so let's crack it open and discuss the basics of how it works. Now, this is going to be dense, and it involves more than 400 functions to work, so we're going to skim over a lot. But starting at a high level, the game mode spawns into each adventuring level a master music controller and an interview controller, and of course the player and the AI characters. Now, AI adventurers you might want to interview have an entity component attached to them that talks to the interview system controller. When a player gets near an adventurer, the interview controller checks that you're not already doing an interview, that you have interviewing ability enabled, and that the adventurer is closest. And if that's all good, it spawns and attaches the interview rhythm game actor to that character. No button press necessary, the player just needs to stay near them. At that moment, we see the core of the interviewing interface, a 3D selection ring with question and answer widgets. While still work in progress, this design allows for the stacking of questions with clear visibility and navigation, regardless of density, while keeping an active selection clearly facing the user. The UI keeps to the adventurer, unobstructing most of the player's screen space so that they can still walk and scan around the screen for threats. Now, players start by selecting which category of question to ask: who, what, where, while, or why, doubling as a music track selector and preview, but that system is being overhauled at the moment, so it's temporarily turned off. Similar to most modern action games, having a hold secondary to aim while you click a primary action to fire, for the interview mechanic, holding your secondary plays the rhythm game, so that your primary action can tap to the notes of the music. Releasing secondary drops you right back to the selector, so you can pursue a different question category really quickly. While the rhythm systems start up before you even see notes to click, the who, what, where categories are immediately replaced by specific lines of questioning for that category. Who are you? Who is that? What monsters? What items? Where settlement? The rhythm game itself has 3 primary components: the music controller, the interview actor, and the note object. Now, the music controller uses Unreal Engine's Quartz system to serve as the metronome for the whole game. In the case of interviewing, it manages which track is going to play and tells the interview actor when to start, so that it joins the interviewing music in time with other music, like the environment, syncing all the bars and beats. While it waits, the interview actor, besides managing the UI, scans the selected track for various parameters, and then once it's queued, the interview actor triggers 2 Unreal Engine meta sound files. one for the music the player hears, and another for a MIDI file that contains music data, such as when to create the note objects for that track. The MIDI file starts playing 1 bar before the music starts playing, because the note objects it creates are scripted to take exactly 1 bar to move visually along a path into the interactive sweet spot, landing exactly in time with the music that they're supposed to go with. The track these objects follow starts at the subject's mouth as though they're being said, looping through the air and back into the center of the UI ring. Along this path, they start inert, become clickable, pass through the scoreable zone, and then reach a failure box that destroys the rhythm object and your incomplete answers if you fail to click in time. This architecture is similar to the classic Guitar Hero or Rock Band game design, with some notable differences. First, instead of 5 tracks with 5 buttons, one single track is easier to play because you are simultaneously pressing other buttons to keep your character near the moving adventurer. Also, you've got a lot you're considering. You've got one eye scanning for baddies, and you're contemplating which answers to pursue. Second, instead of one long track like in Rock Band, the interview tracks are short loops, simple tracks for surface questions, with the music progressing into richer complexity as you dig into deeper answers. Now, the most obvious difference is the fact that you're not accumulating a score, but instead you're completing interview answers. Maintaining a rhythm streak long enough fills out an answer, while missing a note resets all incomplete answers back to 0. In time, further systems will include bonuses for asking the questions the subject indicates they want to talk about, or as well as skill and relationship-based progression multipliers. And the hardest of all, ensuring what answers AI have is always a bit of a mystery. Dynamically determining in a complex backend architecture of what is knowable and what your subject knows about themselves, the mission, and the world. As development progresses, ideally, an average player unlocks 15 to 20 answers across 4 to 5 tracks and 2 to 3 characters in about 4 minutes of gameplay. It's nowhere near done yet, especially regarding game feel, knowledge, and inventory architecture, but it's getting there. More on that next season. If you want me to make a long, unedited video talking through all of the code for the quartz clocks, dynamic rotating UI, harmonics, meta sound triggers, the whole shebang, speak up in the comments. And if you have roles or projects you'd like to contact me about, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. That's all for this episode. On the season finale, we'll be closing out in the journalist hat with an ethical grab bag of do's, don'ts, and what have I done's. See you then for more 5 hats. Take care.